Hello and welcome to this video where we'll learn about JavaScript in a little over or under 10 minutes. And in this video what we're going to be doing is show you everything you need to know to get started coding in one of the world's most popular programming languages. So whether you're a complete beginner or just need a quick refresher, this video is just for you. But before we continue, I'd really appreciate it if you can like and subscribe to help me make more of these types of videos. Awesome, let's get into it. So we're going to cover variables, functions, loops, and even build a mini project together. So grab your laptop, open your browser, and let's dive in. So first things first, you need to install anything to start coding JavaScript. Just open your browser, press F12, and open the developer tools. So in here I've got Safari, and I've got the developer tools open, and you can actually just start typing things in console log test like so, and then you can see the output here where it's outputting to the console for us test. Perfect. So you just wrote your first JavaScript code, the console.log. The function displays text in the console. It's like the JavaScript way of talking to you. Now let's talk about variables, and for this bit what I'm actually going to do is go inside here in a Visual Studio Code. I'd highly recommend installing Visual Studio Code if you want to work with JavaScript. It's great for syntax highlighting and things like that. And what I've done is I've created a simple HTML page that imports a script, in our case the test.javascript script. And later on, if we're displaying anything in the console, it will just be displayed directly from here because we're loading our test.html. Perfect. So let's have a look at some variables. So the first one we're going to look at is let name equals Alex, for example. And this declares a string variable of Alex. Then if we look at let age equals 25, and this declares a variable called age, which is a number. Let is student equals true, which declares a variable of type Boolean. So we have three data types here: string, number, and Boolean. JavaScript is smart enough to figure out what the data type is that you're storing, and you can use consts for values that won't change. So for example, things that you want to declare but you will never change, like pi for example, you can declare with const and so on. So const birthday, and here we've got another number variable and another string variable. Perfect. So the difference, let can be changed later, const cannot. So always use const unless the value will change, if that makes sense. Let's have a look at some functions now. So functions are like recipes. They are ingredients called parameters and do something with them. Here's how to create one. So if we type in function, greet person, name, and then return, hello, and then I need to spell function right. Perfect. Cool, so this is a function called greet person that takes in a variable called name, and then it returns a string concatenation that uses the name to display hello and the name that you've passed in. So now let's try this in our console. So if we do console.log and we do greet person, and the name that we're going to pass in is actually name from up above, first name. There we go. That seemed to be conflicting with a specific reserved word. Anyway, first name, hopefully this will display hello Alex. So if we go back to our browser and refresh, you see hello Alex in our console window down here. Perfect. Now, functions are incredibly powerful. So here's a practical example of something you might want to do. So if we have a function, calculate tip, and put in the bill and tip percentage, and we return bill times tip percentage divided by 100, and this will calculate our tip for a specific bill. So let tip equal calculate tip, and let's say the bill is 50 and the tip is 20, and then let's output this into our console log again. So if we do tip amount and then we do dollars plus tip So it should be 6, the tip amount is 10, sorry. Yes, the tip amount is 10, 20% of 50, total 60. And this function calculates tips for restaurant bills, for example, so see how this can reuse in different values. Awesome. Now, sometimes we need our code to make decisions. That's where if statements come in. So you've probably heard of if statements. If you're familiar with programming, then you know them very well. But let's say we have something like a temperature, and it equals 75. Let's say if the temperature is greater than 80, then we will output it's very hot. Else if the temperature is greater than 60, then we will output whether it is good, and else at the very end we will output it's cold. Okay, so what's happening here is we have an if statement which checks that the variable temperature is greater than 80. If it is greater than 80, then it outputs this string to the console. Then, if it's not this, else if, we check if the temperature is then above 60. If it is, it will display whether it's good. And then finally, for any other temperature, it will display it is cold. So for our particular scenario here, it should display whether it's good. So let's check this. If we refresh, we should probably best put this in a function and call it getWeather. And let's actually pass in the temperature into our function. And then let's call getWeather with 75. Let's see what happens. Weather is good. So I hope you see how that works. So if we were to put in 81 in here, for example, then we'll get it is very hot. And if statements come very quickly. The next thing we'll look at is loops. Loops, what they are, they let you repeat code multiple times. Here's a loop example that we're going to look at. So let's create another function and call it loop example. And let's do a simple for loop. So for, we declare a variable, in this case I, which will be our counter. And then this is how many times we'll iterate I. So as long as I is smaller than or equal to 5. And we want to increment the loop by 1 each time, which is the plus after I here. And if we open this up in the console.log and just call this count, and then we need to call our function, and there we go. So this will display, so this counts from 1 to 5. The loop has 3 parts. It starts with the I equals 1 condition and the increment of I++. So let's refresh, and then you see, 1 to 5 is counting for us here. Perfect. So let's have a look at another example. So if we want to create the multiplication table, for example, let's create another for loop. So for let I equals 1, and then I is smaller than or equal to 10, and then I++ again, and then we output in the console 5 times plus I equals 5 times I, and then that will output the 5 times table. And so if we refresh this, and there we go, we've got 5 times 1, 5 times 2, 5 times 1. Let's change that to I. There we go. Now it's the 5 times table. So 5 times 1, 5 times 2 is 10, 5 times 3 is 15, and so on. And yeah, so loops save you from writing repetitive code. Instead of 10 lines, we wrote 3. Awesome. Now we are going to look at arrays. So store multiple values in one array. Think of them as a list. So if we have and call it arrays, and in here let's declare a new variable which will be a array, and this array will be an array of strings. So it will contain some fruits, so apple, banana, and maybe an orange. Perfect. So what this is a list, and each item on the list contains that particular value. So if we want the first value of the array fruits, we will do fruit 0, because each array starts at point 0. So 0 is your first one, and that should display apple. We can also display how many items there are in the array. So fruit.length will give you how many items are in the array. And we can even loop through the array. So let's quickly add a loop as well. So let I equal 0, because 0 is our first item in the array. And then we do I is smaller than fruits.length. And one thing to note is that length will give you the actual length. So here, fruit.length will give you back 3 because there's 1, 2, 3 items in the list. It won't start from 0 and give you back 2. So it can be maybe sometimes a bit confusing. But let's say we output all the fruits. That's fruit I, and that will give us the specific array. And so let's call our function, for example, and then let's refresh. What's happened there? What we had to do here is I was using a for loop, but what we need to actually use is a different type of for loop, which is a for each element in an array loop. And my personal development environment was stopping me from actually running this code. But what we need to do is a different type of for loop. So this loop actually iterates for each item in an array. So it does for, and then it declares the specific element of fruits, and that will display all the different fruits. So in here we can see apple, there's 3 things in the array, and then it says I like apple, I like banana, I like orange. And perfect. So just to wrap up, so we covered a few things here. We covered variables, functions, conditionals, loops, arrays. And so next steps from here is to practice these concepts. Try building small projects and don't be afraid to experiment. The console is your playground. So if this helped you out, smash that like button and subscribe for more coding tutorials. And drop a comment with what you'd like to learn next. Maybe React, maybe Node.js or Angular, or maybe some advanced JavaScript concepts. But anyway, thank you for watching and happy coding.